So I'm in 8th grade computer class, and it's another one of those days when the computers aren't working. They're those super old school Macintosh, like first generation computers that were donated to our school. Have you seen them before? Those old school Macintosh computers, black screen, green letters. They're not working. So my teacher says, guys, we're gonna put on a movie. And he always put on the same lame movie, The Red Balloon. It's a silent film where this little boy is chasing around a red balloon that's floating throughout the streets of like Italy or something. But I remember as soon as he says he's gonna put on this movie, I decide I'm gonna take a nap. And so I put my head down on my desk and I instantly fall asleep. At some point, I don't know if it's a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes into this movie, I'm woken up. And I'm woken up by what I think is a loud fart. And here's the thing, there's this really cute girl that's sitting right next to me. I've had eyes for her for many moons. And all I can think of is, did I really just fart out loud? Was that me dreaming? If I did fart out loud, did this girl just hear it? And so I slowly open my eye to see if she's looking at me. And she's not. She's looking straight ahead at the TV. She's watching the movie, and I think, yes, I didn't fart. I didn't fart out loud, thank the Lord. And I slowly begin to sit up. And as soon as I sit up, she turns to me. That was nasty. No, no. Now, why do I tell you that story? For 2 reasons. First and foremost, it reminds me of a time in my life when I allowed all of these people, everyone around me, to define who I was, to tell me of my worth, to tell me whether or not I was good enough. Right after that moment, after that day, I was completely devastated. I was like, Mom, there's no way in heck I can go back to school tomorrow. What if they make fun of me? What if they label me different names? What if I become known as the stinker sleeper, the butt belcher, the nasty napper, the snoring sphincter? My life is ruined. Ruined. Again, I tell you this story because it reminds me of a time in my life when I allowed people to literally crush me with their words. What they thought of me defined who I was, my value, and my worth. The other reason why I tell you that story is because it reminds me of balloons. Pop, pop, pop. Good job, Kim. Not only because I was watching the red balloon that horrible day when I farted in my sleep, but because the balloon is a great analogy for anyone who tries to find their value, again, their self-worth in anything other than Jesus. When it comes to our identity, it's Jesus that we actually need. So why the balloon? Because when we put our self-worth, our value, our identity in anything other than Jesus, we become like a balloon really in 2 ways. Number 1, we become fragile. We become easily popped. And secondly, based off of what other people think about us, say about us, we either soar to the clouds or we sink and deflate. Think about the balloon. It's fragile, right? All it takes is the tiniest needle to make it pop. Oh gosh, that's so loud. And why are we fragile? It's not just because we have thin skin, but it's because what we're filling ourselves up with, it's air. It has no density, it has no strength, has no weight. Example, when we try to find our identity in our looks, we spend all day and all night trying to be handsome enough, pretty enough, have perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfect skin. We try to put all of our identity in our looks. We put all of this work in looking perfect. And then they break up with us. We wake up in the morning, totally broken out, acne all over the place. We find someone that's more beautiful than us on Instagram. It's painful. It can feel absolutely devastating, leaving us feeling deflated. Or how about this one? When our identity is having perfect grades, getting into that perfect school, maintaining perfect straight A's. We might have it for a little while, but at some point it will let us down. Maybe it's for the first time we get an A-. Maybe we get second place in the science fair. Maybe we don't get accepted into that school. Or how about this one? We do get accepted into that school. And for the first time in our life, we have straight C's. Why? Because in the university, they don't pass out straight A's like they do in high school. You're a dime a dozen now. You're a small fish in a big pond. Here's another example. How about your identity is wrapped up in being the perfect kid? Right? Your brother and your sister, they're the screw-ups of the family. You're going to be known for being perfect. Or maybe it's like those kids at school don't want to be like them. I want to live on my morality. That's who I am. I don't make mistakes. So what happens? You fail like every human being ever to live, and you either get really good at hiding that. Why? Because you can't let anybody know you're perfect. Or you get caught and you get called out, and what happens? You get super defensive because there's no way in heck you're going to admit to the fact that you do anything wrong. Why? Because you're perfect. That is your identity. That's who you are. But here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with wanting to look beautiful. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have straight A's. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have high morals. But you become a balloon when you think that those things can be the core of who you are, that those are the things that are going to keep you afloat. Why? Because those things can be popped too. Again, nobody is perfect. Nobody can be the prettiest. Nobody throughout their life can have perfect, flawless scores and grades. It's only a matter of time before those things, those identities, let you down. Here's another way you know that you're acting like a balloon. It's because you don't even try. You just remain deflated all of the time because the thought of somebody telling you that you're not good enough, you're not beautiful enough, you're not talented enough is just too painful, and so you don't even try. And then there's the destructive things that we try to find our identity in that always fail us, always leave us deflated. Over the years working with students, I've seen many girls try to get their identity by using their bodies to get attention from boys, which always leads them to emptiness, to feeling empty when they figure out that those boys never really wanted them to begin with. Or how about the partier, the guy that finds his identity in the fact that like, I can out drink, I can out smoke, I can out party anyone. I might not get straight A's, but I'm the best at partying. I'll never forget hanging out with these high school boys driving in my car, and they were sharing with me that essentially this is who they were. They were the partier. They didn't give a rat's what other people thought about them. They loved to smoke weed. They loved to get high. They loved to get drunk. They loved to party, and they didn't care what other people thought about them. And I remember looking at these students and saying, hey, I know where this type of identity leads. I know where this is going to take you, and it never ends up good. And it was just a few years after having that conversation with these boys in my car that I get a phone call from one of their mothers saying, I'm super afraid that my son is going to die. He's literally addicted to every drug under the sun. He's tried them all. He's spent all of his money. He's now broke, and he's having to resort to stealing dust off from Walmart in order for him to get high. I need some help. He needs some help. If he doesn't get some, I'm afraid he's going to die. And I don't say that to shame anybody that finds themselves in that type of identity, right? It doesn't matter if you put your identity in the destructive things or even the good things. The reality is this: if we try to find who it is that we are in anything but Jesus, it's always going to let us down. It's always going to leave us feeling lost and deflated, feeling hopeless. At some point, it's going to let us down. Lesson 2 from the balloon is when we try to put anything other than God at the center of who we are, we have to have more and more of that thing to inflate, to soar. We need more to soar. And if we don't have it, we always deflate. So think about Facebook and Instagram. Why do we sit around waiting to see if someone's gonna like our post? It's because we need their affirmation in order for us to soar. And so we sit there and we wait and we look at our phone, 1, 2, 3, right? We have 50 likes, yes, right? We feel good, and it literally sends us up into the clouds. We get sent up into the sky. But what happens when nobody likes our post? What happens when it feels like nobody even cares. It sends us into despair, sends us into feeling broken, like we have no value. And once again, there's nothing wrong with enjoying it when somebody likes your post, when someone says, hey, you look really pretty on Instagram, or I really thought that was interesting, that thing that you posted on Facebook. There's nothing wrong with liking that. But you know you're a balloon when you need it. If you don't have man's approval, you soar. And when you don't get it, it sends you into the depths of despair. You want to know one of the beautiful things about being a youth pastor, and this is going to sound a little bit sadistic, but it's this: you guys help expose the times in my life in which I'm acting like a balloon. Like when I go to tell a funny story in my talk, or at least I think it's funny, and I get to that point where I think everybody should laugh and nobody does. Crickets. Or when students stare at me and are like, dude, your teeth are crooked. Your voice sucks. You're old. You're like old. You're too old. This game sucks. Your talk sucked. It was too long, too short, too much scripture, not enough scripture, too serious, too many jokes. And then the parents. Did you really tell a poop story at church? Are you really talking about sex at church? Why didn't you send out that email? I've been waiting for the email. You let kids smoke at camp? You let girls wear bikinis at camp? You let the boys wear bikinis? Just kidding. No parent has ever said that. And I know I'm acting like a balloon when I'm destroyed by that criticism. I want to give up. I don't want to get out of bed, or that criticism is just playing over and over and over and over and over again in my mind. I obsess about it. I feel absolutely deflated. Or I know I'm being a balloon when I just won't listen. That the people actually have some really good criticism that I need to hear, but I can't hear it. Why? Because my identity is wrapped up in being a perfect youth pastor or not having flaws. Here's the other way I know I'm being a balloon. It's when I'm told I'm crushing it, when there was a good talk or a good worship set or camp was awesome, or I helped a parent out in a certain way and I'm told that I'm doing great, and I absolutely soar like up into the clouds because I can finally feel good about myself, that I can finally feel like my life matters. Again, there's nothing wrong when someone tells you something nice and it feels good, but do you need it in order to be happy, to soar in life? It's okay if it stings a little bit when someone says, hey, you're not doing something right, but does it send you into complete despair and sadness? If that's what's happening, then I know I'm being a balloon. And so what's the answer? Well, early on in youth ministry, I knew I was going to have to find something more solid to build my life on, to build my worth, my value, my identity on. Otherwise, I was absolutely going to lose my mind. And the thing that I've come to learn is a thing that I think all of us need to learn, that all of us need to have in order to understand our true value and worth, our true identity. And we're going to discover what it is in another story with Jesus and his disciples. And it's found in Matthew 16:13 through 31. So let's read it together. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the other prophets. But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he ordered his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Jesus says, don't be balloons, be rocks. Oh, gosh, Kim. Now that might seem like a really weird or bad metaphor, right? Why in the heck would Jesus say be rocks? But just think about the characteristics of a rock. They aren't easily broken, right? People can make fun of them, people could knock them, and it doesn't do anything to them. People can critique them and they're not crushed. You could tell a rock, it's ugly, nothing's gonna happen to it, right? You could stab a rock, it's not gonna even phase it. You can tell it's so stupid. You're such a dumb rock. You can't hurt a rock. And they don't need to be filled, right? They're already completely solid, right? They're not walking around hoping that someone will say something nice to them so that they can be filled up. Why? Because they're already filled. And get this, they're not just rocks for themselves. As Jesus says, they're actually rocks for the world. They're safe people to be friends with. They're safe people to be around. And so the question has to be, how do we become a rock? Well, let's look at what Jesus says in this passage. If you notice, he doesn't start off saying to the disciples, hey guys, this is who you are. He says, guys, this is who I am. Why does Jesus start off talking about who he is? Because he understands that in order for us to know who we are, we first must know who he is, that he's our creator, he's our maker, he's our designer. In order for us to know our identity, we have to know his identity. Think of it this way. Who's your favorite artist, maybe your favorite band? For me, that's Chris Martin. Let's say Chris Martin has just written the song Yellow, and it's been on the top of the charts for the past 10 weeks. And so the whole world is looking to Chris Martin for him to explain, what is the meaning? What is the purpose? Why did you write the song Yellow? And so they're interviewing him, and he begins to explain, this is why I wrote this song. And that's when Gabe Kinsley chimes in and says, hey Chris, I'll explain to him why you wrote Yellow. So the reason why Chris wrote Yellow is because he was feeling on a certain day this, Gabe, how can you bloody tell the world what the song Yellow means when you didn't write the song? You're not the creator of the song, Gabe. You're not a bloody scientist. Shut up, I'm bloody gonna fix you. Right? I can't explain to the world the meaning behind the song because I'm not the artist. I'm not the creator. I didn't write that song. Number one, you can only find a lasting identity when you know who your creator is. The one who made you, the one who names you, the one who knows everything about you. The only person that has the power to tell you who you are. You need to know the artist in order to know the art. Number two, you can only find a lasting identity when you know what the creator says about you, what he thinks about you, how he feels about you. And that's why Jesus says, hey guys, who am I? And Peter replies with, Jesus, you're the Messiah. You're the chosen one. You're the creator of this universe. You're the creator of all of us. To which Jesus says, Peter, you're right. Now I must go and I must die on behalf of the whole world, on behalf of all of you. And the reason why I must die is so that you can know who you are. You can know how I feel about you. You can know how much I love you, so that you can be totally, completely confident in who you are, in your identity, which is found in me. Jesus says, listen, you no longer have to do the right things. You no longer have to perform. You no longer have to be perfect. You no longer have to act or look a certain way in order to feel loved. You just are loved. You just belong to me. That's who you are. And to prove it to you, I'm going to die on your behalf. All you have to do is be you. You are more than enough to me. It has nothing to do with what you do or you don't do. It has to do with who you are. It's no longer about what other people think about you. It's no longer about getting other people's approval. You already have mine. You belong to me. So how do you become a rock? First and foremost, you believe that Jesus is who he said he was, which was God in the flesh, that he was the chosen Messiah, that he came to this earth so that you would know that you're desperately loved by God, that you belong to him, that you belong to his family. You believe that. And then secondly, you pursue him back. You spend time with him. You listen to his words over you. Again, you open up his Bible, his holy word, and you listen to the stories of who Jesus was and how he loves his people. You become a rock when you trust Jesus truly is God and that he truly loves you. I've heard it said that the whole Peter and the rock thing was really just for Peter. That was an identity specifically to him because he was supposed to be the founder of the early church. But that's definitely not what Peter thought. And so we're going to close by reading 1 Peter 2, 4 through 10. And it's a passage in which he says, no, I'm not the only rock. God calls all of you guys living stones as well. This is your identity. You belong to his family, and he's creating something through your life. So as I read this passage, I want you just to be quiet, listen to the words, and meditate on them, and maybe try to listen to what God is specifically wanting to say to you tonight. As you come to him, the living stone, rejected by humans but chosen by God and precious to him, you also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood, offering spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. For in Scripture it says, "See, I lay a stone in Zion, a chosen and precious cornerstone, and the one who trusts in him will never be put to shame." Now to you who believe, this stone is precious, but to those who do not believe, this stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone, and a stone that causes people to stumble, and a rock that makes them fall. They stumble because they disobey the message, which is also what they were destined for. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you might declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness and into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy.